everyone, welcome to the Resident Evil Ultimate tier list. I am a little bit under the weather, unfortunately, so bear with me, but I wanted to make a tier list of all of the Resident Evil games that have been made. I have played each and every single one of them, except for Resident Evil Gaiden, but I know at least enough about that to make an opinion on it. I just wanted to do this, see how it goes, and ultimately just try and give as an objective of an analysis that I humanly can for each and every one of these games. So let's go. My criteria is very simple. It's mainly my opinion and fan opinion, meaning that I'm trying to get everyone's objective analysis of the game. Generally, I try not to take reviews and critic analysis into it personally, mainly because a lot of them are very biased. A lot of them get things wrong all the time. And I think people who enjoy these games, fans above all else, know these games way better than anyone. That's why I'm taking fan opinions very seriously, and I think their ideas and critiques are generally far more worthy. Number 2, is it scary? Especially since it's a survival horror game, and a horror game in general should at least feel tense, should at least feel, make you sweat a little bit. And ultimately, does it have to make you think, put you in tense situations where, on a drop of a dime, something happens and you have to think on your feet, or actually make you have to really think about pathways that you have to go to? For instance, like in Resident Evil 1, if you kill this zombie who's really terrifying to begin with, are you going to have to do X, Y, and Z and go around this particular way or this particular way? Number 3, is it fun? Is it enjoyable? Do you have a good time? Yes or no? That's the ultimate question. Number 4, is it playable? This unfortunately does hurt some of the games because of system limitations. I do try to factor that in at the very least, but ultimately it does have to be taken into account. Number 5, is it replayable? Now, this is mainly the critique for survival horror games just in general, and where Resident Evil gets a lot of its fame is its replayability, and I think that's a big aspect of, more so specifically, I think Resident Evil games, Silent Hill games to an extent and a degree, but ultimately Resident Evil games. Is it replayable? Does it make you want to go back, find different things, try different passageways? Do you want to replay the game and master it? Number 6, is it fair? Does it have a proper difficulty to it? Meaning, when I play the game, am I going to be ripping my hair out, or am I going to be thinking, damn, I just kind of messed up on that, was my bad, I totally crapped the bed on that? I want to play a game where I'm not basically just trying to chuck my controller across the room because it's so immensely frustrating, difficult, or basically to a point where it just pushes people away from wanting to play it. Now, that's an oversimplification of it, but I'll probably get more in depth with some of these games as it goes on. Number 7, the story. Obviously, each game has its own self-contained tale. How does it pertain to the overall narrative that the Resident Evil universe has created? Does the story do basically the lineage, the legacy justice? Now, that last part mainly is for the remakes, in fairness though, but it will still pertain to the other games. And finally, number 8, what's the legacy of it? How has it aged? How is it going to be remembered? How are people going to really look at this game, years from now? So I have my list here, pretty simple. I'll explain the categories in just a second, but I have put on here all 29 Resident Evil games. Main games, side games, online games. The first one, Mount Weskermore. Pretty obvious, but because, Wesker's just ultimate evil retarded, but Giga Chad. And ultimately, but this specific tier is going to be mainly for what I think is the top Resident Evil games of all time. The Mount Rushmore, the top 4. So there might be some contention with where I place a lot of these games, but bear with me. The second one, Tyrant. This is basically, you're almost a great human BOW subject, but you have 1 or 2 fatal flaws that ultimately put you down in this particular list. And ultimately, probably not fair for some of these games I'm going to be putting in this particular tier, but I think ultimately there's always at least 1 or 2 things missing that the other games in the Mount Weskermore do have that this tier just doesn't. Boulder Puncher is pretty much just average. You're a good game, probably replayable, and more or less just you're missing a lot of things that do not make it Resident Evil or do not make it effectively the great survival horror experience that people really look back on. Tier 4 I have as Brad Vickers. This tier is mainly going to be for the subpar games. Might be a little bit unfair to Brad Vickers, but you know, he technically did leave them stranded at the mansion for a very long time, but he did drop the rocket launcher. So there is that. This final tier is basically as it says, nope. Unfortunately, it's not that these games might not even be terrible, it's just I just don't like these games. There's a lot of aspects that are completely wrong with it. I think they're just either broken, unplayable, or just not overall enjoyable experiences that I think deserve any warranting to be a part of any list. It's just a complete fail, plain and simple. Okay, I think that's it. Let's get started. Alright, so the first Resident Evil game, the classic, the one that started it all. Let's just start off with, you know, the reality of it right away. It just hasn't aged well. Graphically, it's not as scary. It was scary in the moment. I remember my dad playing it when I was younger, and I played it when I was like 7 and was terrified. Not a good look for me, but hey, I mean, it's enjoyable. It still functions, and obviously it's the one that started it all, but unfortunately, despite it being the first, it's just, you know, a bunch of other games have come out within this series that I think just ultimately eclipse it. But still, just for legacy alone, it deserves at least to be in the B tier. Is everything you want a sequel to actually be. It's incredible. Still plays exceptionally well today. And honestly, I remember, I think, reading a Game Informer back in like 2012, and I think it was in the top 20 of the greatest video games ever made, and I was like, okay, that's fair. It's incredible. It's got a great story, continues the overall narrative, continuing from the Arkalai Mountains into the actual Raccoon City itself, although a lot of it is self-contained within the actual police station. It does venture off into other areas of the game itself, so you do get to explore a little bit of Raccoon City. Introduces, I think, what most people would probably consider to be their favorite character, Leon, and I think Claire's a really wonderful addition, although outside of, I think, Code Veronica and Revelations 2, we don't really see a lot of her, at least in comparison to the other people. But then I could say that about Jill Valentine. It's just a wonderful game. The multiple different scenarios, tighter gameplay, it's actually scary. Introduction of the lickers, you actually do have to think about where you're gonna go. Actual ammunition and item management takes place. I forgot what the actual system is, but I think it's like the warping system, whatever they have, which I think it's, I forgot what it's called, but you know, if you pick up something from the A scenario that the other character can't pick up in the B scenario, so you know, it actually does make you think how you want to play out this game properly. And it's not insanely difficult for those who aren't used to tank controls. It is absolutely a mountainous task, but it is still fun and entertaining. Its legacy is incredibly well defined. I don't want to say it's the equivalent of like Silent Hill 2 in terms of like the overall legacy of horror games, but it is absolutely, I think, right up there without a hesitation. I personally think it's better than Silent Hill 2, although I like Resident Evil better. I'm biased. It is absolutely the gold standard and deserves to be in the Mount Rushmore of Resident Evil games. Now, here's where we're going to probably come up with some controversies and contentions. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is a banger of a game. There's a much more action-heavier approach to it. There is a lot of things that go on with this game that are still absolutely terrifying, namely Nemesis himself, obviously, and his AI alone is incredible. Considering it's 1999 too, like he actually not only travels and follows you around, but he actually adapts to you fighting and attacking him. So you really have to be on your A game if you're gonna actually be able to defeat him. Especially with tank controls, it's damn near impossible. The different scenarios, I think some people, it's really hit or miss. Some are really cool and give you different pathways that you can go to. Like when your train gets derailed, you know, do you start at the clock tower? Do you start at the other place? I forgot what the other place is called. It's been a while since I played it, I'm sorry. But others, there's only like one real answer or solution. Like I still remember the scenario where like the ground crumbles, you fall in, and there's like boxes heading to you. You can either climb up really quickly or fall down. And it's like, well, if you climb up really quickly, you just continue on your way. But if you go down, then you gotta fight a whole bunch of different monsters and worms, and it just impedes your time. So unless you want to make the game more difficult for yourself, it kind of made no sense to do that. But I will say it's not a perfect game, although it's, I think, most people's favorite fan favorite at the very least, and I think personally I have an attachment to the story and I really enjoy the story. And one of the few things I might give the remake some credit is I think they did some things justice, but that's probably the only thing I'm going to say nice about the remake, to be honest with you. Still, it's not up there for me at the very least as the Mount Rushmore of Resident Evil games. I just think there's, again, too many, but I still think it's absolutely worthy of B tier. Resident Evil 4 for me is both an incredible game and also one that I have a lot of problems with. It's such a deviation from literally the last 8 years of Resident Evil games that have been coming out with, medical stuff and evil corporations and their deviation to go to basically a Spanish remote village that's under religious cult control effectively, which in fairness, it's not a bad idea. It's such a deviation that it took a while for a lot of people to get used to, but just the changing of the controls, the third person point of view that has quite literally influenced most games for the next 15-20 years. I think its story is both really interesting and also crazy pants wackadoodle, and a lot of the characters are incredibly annoying, and I think the only thing that really makes it great is Leon. This game is actually pretty easy, but also really hard and unforgiving at the same time. It strikes a very interesting and correct balance, I think, and it's actually scary, and it's probably one of the most replayed Resident Evil games of all time. It hits pretty much every single benchmark you want, and it's everything you want it to be, except for the story and the fact that, I'm just going to give you a bit of a spoiler, I think the remake is a little bit better, which unfortunately is the only reason why I'm putting this in the B tier right around here. Now, I just actually recently replayed Resident Evil 5, very recently, yesterday, just finally finished it. And ironically, this actually doesn't influence my rankings because I had initially planned to do this before I played Resident Evil 5. First and foremost, it's not a bad game. It's enjoyable, and I still think one of the top 3 high-selling Resident Evil games of all time. I mean, people like this game. They like the co-op. I think they like Sheva, and there's a lot of aspects to really like about it. I think the gunplay is basically just a much more improved version of Resident Evil 4, although, my lord, you run out of ammo really quickly, and they just keep feeding you bullets, but then it does make you think that, I should have a diverse enough arsenal in order to, it forces you to switch guns, is my point, and actually have to deal with certain enemies in a different way. So there's at least some things about it that I really enjoy. The setting is one thing, the story I do like, but the first 2 chapters, I think, are an absolute drag on the game. There's so many things that are good, and there are so many things that are bad, and obviously that very end with Chris punching a boulder, sure, and the Ouroboros obviously being just a bit of an extension ripoff, although they're kind of connected with the Las Plagas in Resident Evil 4. It just depends on how you want to look at it. Again, it's not a bad game. It's just, this game, they're clearly going in a completely different direction, trying to cater to more of an action-oriented Call of Duty market. It's late 2000s, when a lot of those games were coming out. Bulletstorm, I still love that game, but it's catering to an audience that's, not really looking for the old school survival horror experience. But still, it's decent, and I think at least deserves, an average score, or the Boulder Puncher score. This is probably the first game on my channel that I played that I absolutely I forced myself to play. What sucks is I didn't even hate the idea. I just think they thought more content means, more people will be happy, and I think they completely missed the point of what makes Resident Evil great. This is the first really bad one, where it's just, you try to do something, I think, with a certain level of good intention, and you just completely drop the ball. The gameplay is incredibly fun, action-oriented. It is the single least scary Resident Evil game I've ever played in my life. It's mindless entertainment. Again, the story's fine. You can craft a really good narrative. I wouldn't even mind if this game was 10 hours long, if you could just shorten a bunch of things and maybe even put maybe more of the modern Resident Evil design behind it. If they remade this game, I wouldn't mind replaying it. I'll just say it straight out, but it's a mess. There's too many things going on. A lot of things kind of make sense, but they also don't make sense. I just still don't understand what Simmons's point is. It's getting to the point where it's just you're just creating enemies just to create enemies, and I don't know. Like, a lot of these characters come out of nowhere and they're not really built up. You can believe Wesker because you've had like 6 games to build him up, basically, or so many games to build him up. And Sadler, you know, at least in the original game, he's evil, but at that point the trope was getting tiresome, so who knows. Anyways, this is just too much, it's too boring, and I don't know, but it's functional. And again, it's fun, and there's a lot of people that are fans of it, so I can't put it in the bottom tier, but it's Brad Vickers, okay? There are a lot of people that don't like this game, and I think part of the reason is because of the first-person perspective, the change in direction that Resident Evil and the Capcom's going with. I get it. I completely get it. It is still a very tense, a very fun, and I think hits a lot of the darts and marks that they were aiming for. And I'll be fair, you know, if you want to reinvent yourself like Resident Evil has constantly done for decades now at this point, you know, this is the definite direction to go to. Resident Evil 7 is a really good game. I probably like Ethan more than others, but the story is really like, you really have to suspend your disbelief for a lot of it. I like the enemies. I like a lot of aspects of it. I'll just put it that way. Things I don't like. First, who uses videotapes? I know it's in the South, Louisiana, Bayou, all that stuff. I don't think they have VHSs. Even in 2017, there's a lot of things you really have to just, again, suspend your disbelief with the story. I wish there was more enemy variety and more boss variety. There's a lot of things to critique about this game, and I'll be honest, replaying it again and again, it just does not have anywhere near the same impact that it does the first time. But I will say, my very first playthrough, truly one of the most tense and terrifying games I've played for the first time ever. If you've never played this game for the first time, you have to try it at least once. After that, you can do whatever you want with it. And just for that alone, it deserves to get some recognition. There's so many great things about it, and I think at the very least, just in terms of how people remember it, I remember it fondly. I don't have the ultimate greatest memories of it in retrospect, constantly replaying it. It is still one of the most unique and terrifying experiences I've ever played, and I think it still deserves to be a Tyrant level game. I feel like I still don't know. I should probably just look this up at some point, but I believe this was actually supposed to be like Revelations 3, and then they moved this game up, or changed the title effectively to make it a Village, and then changed a bunch of aspects of it. I'm not quite sure. Either way, whoever made this idea was probably just taking a lot of drugs at a rave and just said, screw it, let's just go for it. And I love them for it and hate them for it. It's like everything is such a mixed bag. That's the only way I can describe it. I don't like Mother Miranda as a villain, but I think she's an actual empathetic character if you like actually try and get into her story. Like, it's like she's only trying to do this to bring her daughter back. I think that's something that's really cool, and you can actually explore that a little bit more, maybe with the themes of the game. Like, half the game I really enjoy playing. I love the factory. I love Camp Castle Dimitri. I love those. Those are my two favorite parts of the game. I cannot stand that giant baby. That part's only scary after the first time you play. It is not scary every other time you replay the game. I promise you. It's just not. It just becomes annoying and literally just like an hour-long drag within your playthrough. And I could give two craps about Moreau. Poor fishy boy though. Still, I think they're trying to find that mix of horror, and then they're just trying to make sure that there is enough action to satisfy more of the modern gamers, more of the people who enjoy the combat aspects of Resident Evil, because they are very unique combat aspects, and I will give them some props for that. And like I said before, this is probably my most replayed Resident Evil game, begrudgingly. I don't know. I personally love it, but if I have to be objective about it, it's not a Tyrant game. It's just not. There's so many things wrong with it. The story alone's just, half of this could probably just be completely just not made if Chris just tells Ethan that's not his wife, or slips a note to him or something. I don't know. There's a bunch of different things that could have avoided this. That alone just, ugh. Hey, it's still a good game though. Boulder Puncher. Now, Resident Evil Survivor, I played it once, so I'll be fair. I haven't played this in about 22 years. It's been quite a long time. I just thought it was a very different game. They tried to do the first person thing a very long time ago, so this isn't Resident Evil's first time trying to do the first person thing. It just had a very strange story, one that involved amnesia. I just could not get behind anything with this game. I mean, it's not the worst game of all time. I have to make that point clear. If I did have to be reasonable about it, I just don't think I'd ever play this game again. and I don't think I really enjoyed myself playing this game. There are probably some fans who enjoy it. I mean, you get to play as this guy named Ark, who's like buddies with Leon, and you're trying to figure out some stuff, and you think you're this guy, Vincent, this entire time, but you're not. But it's literally like the ultimate cliched storyline, almost to like, I don't even say a frustrating degree, but it definitely is just, it's bland. It's like they kind of just cooked this up and then put it out there, and it didn't help that they didn't have like the fully 3D rendered backgrounds like the previous Resident Evil games had at that point. And unfortunately, it just seemed like something that they were kind of just trying out to see how it would work out, but generational hardware just wasn't functional at the time. So it just seems like it's a little bit of a, an era. It's still playable, but if I just had to be brutally honest, I probably am going to put this as a nope for me. Resident Evil Code Veronica is such an incredibly frustrating game. My god, it's very difficult to comprehend this game if you have not played it. Probably one of the best RE storylines, a great soundtrack. Steve Burnside's one thing, but I think his ending at the very least gives him some redemption. I mean, and this game is so impactful to the story that a lot of people still believe this is the true successor to Resident Evil 2. This is the direct sequel. I think that's already been debunked. I'm not 100% positive. I'm 95% positive, but still, that's how impactful this game is. It is just hard, borderline hard. There's just a long stretch where you are on your own. It is gritty survival horror with tank controls and all that. Really, it is hard. I just remember this long stretch where there's nothing for you. There's no health pickups, and they are just attacking you left and right, and you are really forced to survive. I mean, you can probably critique it as just hey, it's, survival horror. You really have to think outside the box. But for a lot of new people who want to get into Resident Evil and want to play these games, my god, that's almost a non-starter for a lot of people. Still, best story, Alexia and Alexander, the twins, the Code Veronica project, all wonderful. I think it's something that if this game didn't come out, I don't know how Resident Evil really continues. That sounds very weird to say, because I think this game has gotten so much love and so much fanfare that I think it's gone Capcom, I guess you could say, in the series through a lot of hard times. At least that's what I think personally. I'm probably wrong about it, because there was a pretty couple year gap between these games, and this game has had some real longevity, but there's just so many things wrong with it, and it's really difficult for me to put this in the Mount Westmore of video games for Resident Evil. It is a tyrant level game though. I'll be fair, this is just going to be pretty quick and short. Survivor 2 Code Veronica, it's basically just Code Veronica, but it's a light gun kind of game, and then Nemesis shows up. I mean, it's fun. It's just, I would just much rather play Code Veronica. I'll just put it that way. I just think they were just trying to make a game for it. It seems like it's for the arcade, so not really a console level game, to be honest with you. So, I'm sorry. It's just a nope for me. If there are fans out there, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Resident Evil Gaiden. Again, this is the only one I haven't played, and I'll be fair, it was on the Game Boy Color, and I believe this is a non-canon story, so I'll be fair, it's a non-canon story with an interesting concept. It's just, basically a transforming BOW, one of the modern consoles. I think that'd be great, but unfortunately, it's just non-functional on a Game Boy Color. They try though. They really do push the limitations on this console, so I'll give it credit, but it's a nope for me as well. Now, the piece de la resistance, the Resident Evil 1 remake. If you want to do a remake, Capcom, do it more like this, please. This is effectively just everything you want in a remake. This is an actual remake. It's basically just the same game with a legitimate actual graphical upgrade, which looks photorealistic. Dude, I had people who had never played it before be like, oh, did this game come out last year? It's oh no, this game came out 24 years ago. They're like, what? Oh my god. I tell you, this is on the GameCube, by the way. I just want to point that out, okay? Just that alone. It's incredible. Improved voice acting. It's taken far more seriously, and it's actually unbelievably terrifying. Unbelievably so. My god. And it is hard, but fair. Now, if you know where everything is in the game, then this is just easy peasy lemon squeezy. Plus the addition of Lisa Trevor. Oof, that by far is one of the greatest inclusions I think I've ever seen. It's just an A+ game all around. There's really just no other way to put it. It's just good. That's the only way I can even really properly describe it. It is, as of right now, I think the number one. I think it has to go in the Mount Rushmore as the number one game. It has to, so far. Let's see if I change my mind, but as of right now, it's number one. Now, again, some controversy, but I think I'm going to have some more people on my side. Resident Evil 0 is not a bad game. It's basically the same graphical upgrades as Resident Evil 1 and plays just as well, except there are just like game-breaking things that are just borderline non-functional. No item boxes, really. I think their intention was to try to make the survival horror aspect like really good and really fun, and I can appreciate that. The problem is that, let's say you drop something that you don't think you need, but then, you play 30 minutes, you go through like a bunch of the game, and it's like, oh, this one piece I need I dropped, you just, it's so frustrating. You have to go all the way back, and it's just like, my god, like I can't do this. Billy's reliable enough, and then it's just, this game, I think the big problem is that this game released along with Resident Evil 1 Remake, and it's just a substandard version of it when you play those two, and you just see all the flaws, all the issues that Resident Evil 0 has compared to the 1 Remake. And then it just kind of messes up the narrative a little bit too, because it's like this takes place before the actual mansion incident. This is like another mansion, and Wesker's there, and what's his face? Oh my god, why can't I think of his name? Birkin is there, and there's this, oh my god, it's such a nonsensical storyline, and honestly, it's not bad, but like the game itself is just very, very, very frustrating. And I think it's just so frustrating because it's like they're trying to tell like a lot more of the Resident Evil lore here, because technically like the main villain is Marcus, but it's not really Marcus, it's Marcus's leeches, and there's like a queen leech, and it's like, it's just, I can't even, it's just, I think, ultimately a disappointing game. If this game gets a remake and it's done properly, then I think we'll have some revisionist history, I think, to properly look at it. But as of right now, this is a tough one. And a tough one that, if I had to be objective and be fair about it, I probably would have to put it with the Brad Vickers. There's like actual game-breaking stuff here, along with like Code Veronica, which is why I can't put Code Veronica in the Mount Rushmore. I just can't. I want to put it higher, but I can't. So now we have Resident Evil Dead Aim. Just what a game. That's kind of the only way I could probably properly explain it. It's such a bizarre game. Honestly, that's the only way I could properly explain it. And I think they were trying to like low-key kind of dip their toes in to see what Resident Evil 4 probably would be like or could be like. It takes place on a ship. You take control of two people. One was what's his name? Bruce? Is it Bruce? What's his name? Bruce McGovern or something like that. Anyways, you take both characters, him and Fong Li, just a more Chinese version of Ada Wong. I don't know. It's such an unhinged game, to be honest with you. If they remade this game, I would buy it instantly, just to see if they would keep all the things that they were trying to do. Let me start by saying I don't think it's like a terrible game. It's pretty short. Like, I could probably beat this game in like 3 hours if I really, really wanted to, probably less. I think it's just the gameplay is really what gets me. It's because that was when like PlayStation was trying to really use the light gun as like a mechanic, which is fine and all, but if you're just playing with a conventional controller, going from a third-person view of moving to then a first-person view of shooting, it's really just all over the place. I mean, you could fight some hunters, it's cool, and the big baddie, Morpheus, or I don't know. For those of you who don't know, Morpheus literally turns into a BOW at the end, literally switches sexes. It's such a bizarre game. I don't even know how to really explain it. It's just an action thriller kind of thing that's kind of half-baked with some interesting ideas that I will have to admit. I mean, it's really technically like their first foray, at least into the more modern hardware, into like a first-person perspective. It's not a bad game, but it certainly is not good. It's not very well thought out. It's not well fleshed out. The graphics are not aging well with this one. I don't know. It's just it's a game. I'll put it that way. And yeah, I'm gonna have to place it here, unfortunately. So we'll do the Outbreak games separately, but I really do enjoy them. I think they're both minimum, Boulder Puncher games. For those of you who don't know about the Resident Evil Outbreak games, these are probably, I personally think, some of the most wanted remakes, especially with Resident Evil and Capcom's history with trying to adapt the Resident Evil franchise for online multiplayer. Honestly, just make another Outbreak game. Like, this is the perfect way to go about doing so. Especially when you already have so many assets that you can use. I mean, might as well. But effectively, you play as a random character of your choice. There's a bunch of them. I can't name them all. But you go through a multitude of different scenarios during the actual outbreak that occurs in Raccoon City. And as these survivors, you just have to try to survive for the most part. I don't know. I've always thought Kevin Remnant was always really cool. Kind of overrated as one of the characters, but you know. And also very important now because, technically speaking, it's definitely canon. Because Alyssa Ashcroft, the mother of one of the protagonists in the new Resident Evil Requiem game coming out as of the recording of this, in about a couple days, is in this game. You know, it's kind of cool to kind of bridge it all together. But it's an online game and you work together with various different people or computers effectively to try to make it out of this scenario. There's so many Easter eggs in this game, and it fleshes out a lot of stuff with the actual lore of Resident Evil. Honestly, they're fun games. They are incredibly difficult, though, and way ahead of its time. Like, if this came out at least, even 5 or 6 years later, this game would be probably a masterpiece. But unfortunately, it comes out on the PS2. I think that's like the 6th generation of hardware. And honestly, it's half-baked in so many of the ideas that they wanted to do. I think their biggest crippling thing was the virus meter, because that really ultimately ended up limiting your overall playthrough. And again, for those of you who don't know, the virus meter effectively means if you don't finish the level in the specific amount of time without taking any sort of antiviral supplements within the game itself, your character will turn into a zombie. Every character is different too, but minimum, you probably only have maybe an hour to an hour and a half tops without getting hit or attacked by any zombie before you just automatically turn into a zombie. Which I kind of understand, because it's just, let's hurry it up, finish the level, it's the priority of the mission, but it's also kind of damn man, this game's kind of hard and you're really giving us no room for error. Now, I appreciate Outbreak 1 probably a little bit more, because it really started off and I really, really enjoy the scenarios, but again, that's just me. Personally, I like the Outbreak scenario. Hellfire is just chaos, because you got all those liquors, it's just chaos. And then Decisions I think is a really good scenario too. But as of right now, barring something, this is gonna have to go right around here. Now, basically everything that I said about Outbreak 1 can kind of go along the same lines with Outbreak 2. The only real difference is I just tend to like these scenarios a little bit less personally. I thought the first scenario was way too wacky, though I think it's called Wild Things. It's the one where you're at the zoo with zombie animals and creatures. Great idea, but it's implemented in a very bizarre way. Other than that, the only other scenario that I really, really enjoyed was, I think it's called Flashbacks, where it's the the Axe Man, or the Axe Murderer guy, basically just trying to chase you throughout the scenario. I just think that's funny, and I think ended up having kind of a sad ending to it ultimately. Keep in mind, these are not bad scenarios. I really enjoyed them. But if I had to choose one or the other, I'd probably choose the first game over this game. So it'll be right behind Outbreak, because I still think it's a really well done game. And again, just well ahead of its time. Now we go on to the Wii games. Yeah, the first one's gonna be Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles. Largely, these games are just light gun rail shooters, which is perfect for the Wii. And these are really fun. Short, but really, really fun and enjoyable. And honestly, if you're not a big fan of Resident Evil, and you're too afraid to play the games, but you want to enjoy the story, then I think this would actually be a really good kind of foray into it. Because largely, they take a bunch of the games, their stories, and make them into scenarios. And in this one, I think it's 0, 1, and 3 they mainly do. And then on top of that, they also have a bunch of sub chapters as well. So kind of in Resident Evil 1, how does Wesker come back? Well, he comes back and he fights Lisa Trevor. Cool little things like that. So I think they're really, really good, at least in terms of lore. Gameplay wise, they're very simple and nothing too crazy with them. I like them both equally. This is why it's tough. But at the very least, I think these are average and solid games. And I think, again, these were made specifically for people who really haven't been able to like get into Resident Evil because the games are either too hard, too scary, or just too complicated and contrived and just all over the place for a lot of people to like really hone in and focus on. So maybe this. And I think this was a good attempt, so it'll go here. Now, same exact thing that I said with Umbrella Chronicles really does apply to Darkside Chronicles. Like I said, a good game. If you don't know anything about the story of Resident Evil, then I think this is a really good first attempt and foray into it. And in this one in particular, I think I liked it, mainly because it kind of goes into, because they do Resident Evil 2, they do Code Veronica, and then they do primarily Operation Javier. So if you want to understand Jack Krauser's backstory and just all the stuff that happened between, Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4, then this is your game. It is. Same pros and cons ultimately, and I think, largely, if you had know nothing about the games, I think this is a good foray into the story itself, but ultimately, they're just simple. They're what you expect, and I think, I think they're just really good attempts at trying to just convey the story for people who haven't been able to play it. Simple, sweet, clean, it'll go here. Now, Resident Evil Mercenaries 3D. I don't have a lot of good things to say about it. I'm not a fan of releasing just effectively side content for full price. I think it's a very cheap way to get money. It's sneaky. Even if the game functions and plays really well, I just don't think Mercenaries should have been released effectively as a full price game and released in this state. Like, there's absolutely zero story content. It's basically, do you just like the gameplay of Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, the monsters, all that stuff? I mean, look, it's cool, you can play as all these characters, but dude, it's just, there's nothing here. You get bored after playing this for like an hour, unless you're just like, really into Resident Evil and really into just the gameplay of Resident Evil. There's nothing that's going to keep you here. There just isn't. I'd rather play a whole slew of other games before I would rather play this, to be honest with you. I mean, sure, it was for the Nintendo 3DS, looks fine, plays very well. I have no problem with that, but it's not like a full game. That's my problem with it. It's just a no for me, honestly. Resident Evil Revelations. This is a very good game. It's not the greatest game of all time. That's probably the absolute best way I could properly, explain it. There's a lot of things that they're trying to blend with the original RE and all that, and really trying to make it kind of its own separate thing, if that makes any sense. Because I think this is a lot more horror oriented. I think there's a lot more of it that kind of blends with more of like the Resident Evil 4 flavor rather than the Resident Evil 5 flavor, because I still think Resident Evil 4, despite it being an exceptionally action oriented game, it is still terrifying and very tense to play, and I think really difficult to play, and there's a lot more survival mechanics in that game than there is, I think, in Resident Evil 5. Conceptually speaking, at the very least, I think this was a really good game and a good idea. The purposes of this game, at least story-wise, was to kind of bridge the gap between Resident Evil 4 and 5 to a degree, and fill in a lot of the blanks. It tells Chris and Jill's side with the BSAA, them working with like Jessica, who has like 5 different like traitor reveals. It's like double agent, triple agent, quadruple agent, kind of funny. And Parker, who's just like, chill. Yeah. Look, it's a good game. I think it actually has a pretty good story. I think it goes a little bit off the rails at certain points. I think the ship is really, really intense and really cool. So basically just being aboard. Oh my god, not Terra Grigia. That's not the ship. That's the big place. What is it? The Queen Zenobia. That's what it is. I think it's really cool to like the entire ship part is my favorite section of the entire game. Everything else is kind of just hit or miss, but still, I think it was really fun, really good. Invisible enemies, and I think the final BOW, the final boss, is quite possibly one of the single most difficult bosses in any video game I've ever played in my life. This mofo literally just like teleports. It's crazy. Like, God, if you played this with like, fixed camera tank controls, good luck. It's almost impossible. You can barely fight this guy. This is like a Dark Souls level boss. I am curious if they are going to continue this series of games, because story-wise, I actually kind of enjoy the Revelations games. They're kind of like good B plots and kind of giving some characters who haven't been in the games a while. Specifically, I'm talking about like Revelations 2. who haven't really been a part of a game for a while, giving them some screen time, I think is a really good idea. And I think it's a good chance to really flesh out different stories and ideas that they wanted to flesh out. And I think this game is a really good example of it. Like, this is a good game, but I don't think it deserves to be a tyrant level game. I want to make that abundantly clear. That's like next level stuff, And I think I don't think this game is better than 5. I don't think it's better than Village. So I think it does have to be kind of put right around here. Revelations 2. This is a tricky one because it's... How do I put this properly? It's a well-made game with some dull gameplay mechanics and a really interesting and incredibly intriguing story. I don't know, it's how do I put it? It's a good game. I don't know if it's like a memorable game though, if that makes any sense. It's interesting because you play as Claire, Barry's daughter. Is it Moira? Or is that the little girl? I'm getting the names confused, but Barry's there too. Basically, okay, let me start from the very beginning. It's an episodic game, technically. So when it first actually released, I bought the whole thing. So I got all the episodes and all the games when it released weekly. When they came out, it was fun. It was interesting, and I liked that format for the game because I think it did make the game entertaining in that way. Because you basically played 2 parts of an episode, one with Claire, one with Barry, and it kind of fleshes it out because it takes place in 2 separate times. Claire's the before, Barry's the after, like a couple weeks after, or a month or 2 after, or something like that. And it's kind of like you're seeing the mystery unfold while Barry's trying to solve the mystery. And then there's Alex Wesker, who's really trying to be like Albert, but it's a little less intimidating than Albert, not because she's a girl or anything. It's just her character's not really well built up. At least with like Wesker, he's built up over like 6 games, and you kind of have an idea of what he is effectively. But with Alex, he's only ever really hinted at in the previous games up until now, and I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. It's pretty scary. There's a lot of good parts in it. But I think the level design overall is a little bit tricky and not very player friendly, I would say. In particular, the parts that come to mind, like when Claire gets out of the prison's a little bit complicated. That's not too bad. The village section with Claire's a little complicated. A lot of the places just look the same. It's not really well done in that aspect. And Barry's part with the mansion was really, I was expecting more, I probably would say, and I just felt really let down. And then the final boss fights, kind of Resident Evil still transitioning from trying to be this like horror game to an action game to a horror game. I don't know. I left this game thinking, okay, it was a good experience. I don't know if I'm ever gonna want to play this again, at least conventionally. I think overall it is not a bad game, so I can't put it in Brad Vickers, but it's barely a boulder puncher for me. It's just, there's some things about it that leave me wanting so much more from it than what I ultimately ended up getting. That's probably how I would feel it. It feels very incomplete. And it doesn't help that the ending, post-credit scenes and all that leave this to be a far more open-ended ending and a more open-ended game than previously thought of. Because technically Alex Wesker wins, people. Technically, so I don't know. It's definitely one I would recommend people to play. But if you didn't like it, I wouldn't be shocked. Or if you didn't come away, completely just blown away by it, I wouldn't be shocked by that either. Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. It's a game. Yeah. I don't know really how to properly explain it. It's not a bad game. I think it's been overly criticized over the last couple of years. It didn't run well. Let me make that abundantly clear. When it first came out, it definitely was not a very polished game when it first came out. I think the idea was a pretty decent idea. I actually probably would have enjoyed it a lot better had it not been so interwoven with the Resident Evil games themselves, in particular Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. I think if they just did their own thing, it would have been and came out a lot better. But instead you play as either the Umbrella Spec Ops or the UBSC, whatever Carlos's team is in Resident Evil 3, trying to, either save people, retrieve mission items and objectives, really just try to survive Raccoon City. I mean, it's really, it's an interesting idea and concept that's just poorly executed. And they just try and do way too much with this, and they try to connect it way too much with the original Resident Evil games, which just reminds people of the original Resident Evil games, and it kind of just makes them go, I'd honestly just rather be playing the old Resident Evil games than this. I mean, it's fun, gets overly repetitive, although I did like that Crimson Heads are back, so that's pretty cool. I also think this is one of the few games that's not made technically by Capcom. I think they just like outsourced the production to like a Western studio, and I mean, well, this is the result of what you get, so it's not a nope for me. I honestly probably wouldn't mind playing this, but it's a Brad Vickers kind of game for me. Alright, this one's just gonna be sweet, simple, and short. Umbrella Corp? No, nope. It is an atrocious game. There is nothing here. There's nothing redeemable. They try to change some aspects to make the gameplay a little bit more enticing, and it just ends up being a completely broken mess that just does not deserve to be seen in the light of day. I think this is quintessentially the single worst Resident Evil game ever released. I think there's really no argument. If you want to try and argue it, come at me, bro. It's just, It's one of the few times where I actually listen to reviewers, and I waited until the price drastically dropped down to give it a shot, and it's not even a functional game. It doesn't even work. There's nothing there. Okay, now we're gonna probably have some more controversies. If you haven't noticed, I think I've only had 2 spots in the Mount Wesker Moore section, and I think this next game absolutely deserves it. The Resident Evil 2 remake is just one of the best games I think I've ever played in my life. It's absolutely everything I could ever want it to be, and what anyone would ever want it to be. Honestly, outside of them basically just redoing the Resident Evil 1 remake, what they did to the Resident Evil 2 game, this is pretty darn close to what I would view as a truly honorable and acceptable reimagining of Resident Evil 2. It is tense, it is actually scary, enemies are difficult, but not too difficult. This game makes you think. This game has actual genuine resource management. This game really actually is a survival horror game. And for some of those who are super purists who believe tank controls are a huge aspect of it, I don't blame you. I understand the purist's ideal and belief in survival horror video gaming. Your control scheme is a huge aspect of it, and I think this is the perfect bridge to effectively, I think, a modern interpretation of that, and also one that I think does survival horror honor, if that makes any sense. And I think this game was absolutely necessary, because I think without this game, and 7 to a much more degree, but I think in particular this actually allowed people to approach survival horror in a very organic and genuine way that they never really had to before, and I think that has to be taken into account. Now, for the downside, there are a lot of problems with this game. There's no real B scenarios. Let's just start off by saying that. It's not an actual B scenario. It isn't. And they do change enough things to where I think some people who have genuine criticisms, I can actually honestly agree and believe that. That being said, those are far more tolerable. It's not like they changed, and got rid of like 30 sections of the game. Who would do that? Resident Evil 3 remake. But point being, it's just good. Every time you kill a zombie, man, just, goodness, it just feels so satisfying. Mr. X is what Nemesis probably should have been in the RE3 remake, and he is an actual legitimate problem in this game in a good way, because he really forces you to think in a way that I didn't think the game was going to actually do, but they did. Oh boy, did they do it. And they did it justice. And it's arguably just one of the most beautiful looking games I've ever seen. It's going to hold up well for like the next 30, 40, 50 years well. That's how good this game is. It deserves its place in Mount Wesker Moore. It's not better than the previous 2, but it absolutely deserves a place there. And I think without a hesitation, it deserves, I'm just being redundant now. Okay, I'm going to place it here. Now, the dumpster fire. I'll start off by saying this as the positives. Resident Evil 3 Remake. It is a fun, very playable sequel that I think does a lot of really good things. I like the characters, I like the story, I like their interpretation of it. I do wish they were far more fleshed out. I do wish they were done some more justice, but from what we were given, works very, very well. And I think the story works really well, the gameplay works really well. It functions. The bad, this game is basically just a full price DLC that they try to justify with the whole RE resistance stuff, and I don't like that. And you can't cut out what effectively is pretty much 2 large sections of the game, actually technically 3 if you want to include like the whole cemetery thing where you fight the gravedigger and all that, and replace it with effectively a half-assed boss fight and a Hive 2. Like, they took out the clock tower, which is a huge section of the game. They took out the graveyard, they took away the dead factory. That was always one of my favorite parts of Resident Evil 3, outside of just the city. The city section's like cut into like a fourth. You only really do a fourth of the entire city section Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Like, it's crazy. If this was like literally just DLC, paid for $20, I wouldn't have as much antagonism as I do for it. But if you're gonna put in a half-assed effort and not really give us the full-fledged content that Resident Evil 3 Remake truly deserved, then it's barely a functional game. If you're just giving me what this is and I have to properly review it the way that it is, it's half a game. I'm sorry, it just is. You know, at least like they gave us the A scenarios and the half-assed B scenario in Resident Evil 2 and made it a conventionally really well done game. This is just, it's so short. Like, there's just no other way to explain it. Like, there's so little of this game. I just can't, you know. I'm not even asking for this game to be like 6 hours long, but if I just sped through cutscenes and just sped through this, I guarantee you I could beat this conventionally in less than 2 hours. I'm sorry. Just, that's a no for me. But I can't put it a note because it still functions and there's a lot of things I like about it. So it's a Brad Vickers kind of game for me. RE Resistance. They should just do an Outbreak game. It doesn't have to be like an insane, fully fledged kind of thing, but like you could do a lot with this. But Resistance is fine. I think it's at least Brad Vickers level. It's not great, it's not revolutionary. I did play it when I got the Resident Evil 3 game, and it's interesting. You play as like this mastermind who's trying to like kill these kids who are trying to escape, and like you play as a kid and you just have to survive. And I think that part's really cool, but there's just not a lot of support for this, and there's not a lot of enough different scenarios or masterminds or unique aspects of it to like kind of keep it going. God, I hate Resident Evil when they do this. They actually give a pretty decent idea and then just don't support it. That's a Brad Vickers thing for me though. It could be better. Give us an Outbreak game, please. The RE-verse is just also a non-starter for me. I just can't, man. This is, at this point, Capcom, what are you doing? This is just not a good game. It's basically just a battle royale with some interesting aspects to it, I guess. I don't know. I would definitely be doing your online content a little differently. There's really just not a lot to say about this. It's just, I mean, it's cool because then you could be like, oh, I can be the Nemesis and fight Lady Dimitrescu, or be like Jack Baker, I guess. I don't know. It's just, there's just so many things missing with this game. Can't quite, I just can't quite get behind it. For the final one, and yes, if you've been keeping up, this will be the final one for the Wesker Moore, the RE4 remake. I mean, I briefly hinted at it before, but the RE4 remake is just exceptionally well done. It is, I think, probably closer to, and I don't think Shinji Mikami would agree with this, but this is probably a much more accurate and closer version to probably what he would have wanted Resident Evil 4 to be originally. I mean, probably with a little more levity, obviously, since he did direct the first one, but this game is just remarkable. It is a technological marvel and achievement. It is insane. It is incredibly beautiful. There's so much to do. They do the story honor. Ashley is actually tolerable. Luis is so much better. Everyone has their problems with Ada though, but that's more of a voice actress issue, I think. And it's really not her fault. I think it's just the way they kind of wrote her. And I think she's a lot better in separate ways personally, but that might also just be me. The villains are the only thing that probably gets a bit of a downgrade, especially Sadler. He's even worse in this game than he was in the previous game, and that was already rough enough as it is. And people have issues with Jack Krauser kind of having a bit of a change of backstory, but that's besides the point. This game just rocks. It's so incredibly well done. You can fight, but also like this game is hard. It is not easy. It will kick your ass, legitimately. Try and do Waterhall this time around. See how that goes. Yeah, that's good luck. If you can do it on professional with first try, you are a god tier player. Good luck to you. I mean, I probably could if I tried, but that would take me hours and I'd have to just be very lucky. This game is what I had hoped the remake to be, where my expectations were actually met and somewhat succeeded or exceeded. It's a beautiful game. I will continue to replay this game over and over and over and over and over again. And if Resident Evil 9 hits anywhere near this, then it's gonna be beautiful. Tears. It's beautiful. Mount Wesker Moore. So that's my list. These are just my general thoughts on the Resident Evil franchise. These are my own opinions. These aren't anything too crazy, I hope. But if you see this and, you have disagreements, leave a comment. Like and subscribe, obviously. And look, I mean, this is just my general perspective on things. I think Resident Evil's in a good spot now. I think they're in a good direction. I hope to keep making these games. I'm kind of addicted to them. So, I'll probably do another one of these, or probably edit this one to include Resident Evil 9 when it comes out. So yeah, we'll see. I'm doing this in honor and preparation for Resident Evil 9, so hopefully it's good, guys. Yeah, like and subscribe, and God bless. Have a good one, y'all.